Welcome everybody to the Lake Bluff School District 65 Board of Education regular meeting for October 26th, 2021. And could you please call the roll?
Yes. Ann Hill, present. Mark Berry,
Present.
Carrie Steinbach, present. Tim Penich,
Present.
Amy Connell Donahue,
Present.
Lauren Hirsch,
Present.
Andy Duran is absent.
All right, so we have a quorum and we can begin. So if you guys will please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It is at this point that we offer the opportunity for public comment. There is nobody in the audience. I don't know if we're connected to offer Zoom comment tonight. Do you know if Shelley is available?
We have nothing at this time, Mark.
Okay, thanks. And I have one item to read from the local League of Women Voters, one comment. I've got it here, bear with me. Here we go. To the board members. All right. To the board members, administrators. Nope, that's the wrong spot. Sorry, I'll get there. Okay, from the League of Women Voters in the Lake Forest, Lake Bluff area, regarding the IASB Student Safety Protection Resolution number 2 in the November 2021 IASB annual meeting. Dear members of the District 65 School Board, I am writing to you concerning IASB Resolution number 2 and the upcoming annual IASB conference on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Lake Forest, Lake Bluff area. Our league appreciates the work of the local school boards in defeating similar proposals at the IASB in past years. We respectfully request that you continue to use your voice and your vote this November. Resolution number 2 authorizes the IASB to advocate for new legislation that would allow designated trained employees to carry a licensed firearm in school when students are present. The League of Women Voters of Lake Forest, Lake Bluff area urges this board to send delegates to the annual IASB conference in November and use its voice to vote no on resolution number 2. The proposed resolution could present potentially fatal consequences for students, teachers, administrators, and public safety personnel. There's no evidence that introducing guns in schools will make students safe. The American Federation of Teachers and the National Education Association oppose guns in schools and the arming of teachers. Please consider these points. Law enforcement officers entering a building in an emergency may mistake an armed teacher for a school shooter. FBI derived data from the Violence Policy Center demonstrates that only 20% of the shots fired by trained police officers hit the intended target. The efficacy among non-professionals is likely to be lower. If arms are present in our schools, unauthorized individuals might find ways to access the weapons. In areas where guns are already allowed in schools, dozens of incidents of mishandled firearms have been documented, including injuries to students. School shootings, while horrifying, are still relatively rare, whereas allowing firearms in schools would pose a threat to students and staff every single day. The League of Women Voters has studied gun violence for many years and believes in the importance of protecting the health and safety of our citizens through limiting the access of handguns and semi-automatic weapons. I also invite you to view video coverage of our 2018 program entitled Gun Violence, Local Impact on our website. In addition to Dr. Ingrid Weimer from Lake Forest School District 67, our distinguished panel of experts included Dr. Colleen Cicchetti from Lurie's Children's Hospital, Roman Buckberger from the Lake County Sheriff's Office, and Sarah sorry for these names, Kishnik from the Illinois Council Against Handgun Violence. We appreciate the opportunity to provide you with materials for your consideration and thank you for your time. Please feel free to reach out to us with any questions you have. And this is from Lori Rose, the president of the League of Women Voters of Lake Forest and Lake Bluff area. We are going to vote on that tonight, so we can discuss that at length if we choose. Question, comment?
None.
Okay, any other public comment from anybody on the board? Okay, we're going to move on to offering the board the opportunity to raise a future agenda item. If there's anything you think we need to be talked about in the future, please let us know. You can do that now. You can email myself or Dr. It's called you Dr. Sophie. Dr. Lealy.
Okay.
with your suggestions, if you think there's something important that needs to be covered. Also, this is an opportunity to raise a brief discussion item. If there's something that you know about that you think the board needs to know about, that we can get a brief overview of tonight and delve into deeper at another time. Not hearing anything, we are going to move on to our principal recognition. And do you introduce that, or we'd go right over to Ann?
Well, we are here tonight in the month of October, the entire month, but also tonight to recognize our principals. I want to make sure, I just wanted to make sure we have our presentation up and running because I did put 2 cute pictures up. Shelley, do we have our presentation? The whole month is dedicated to principals, and tonight we are going to be reading a proclamation. Ann is going to be. But we do, I feel like I say it a lot, but I know I can never say it enough. Our principals have a really, really hard job in our district. And the reason that I include these pictures is because it shows, I mean, they're just in there doing all the things. So it doesn't matter what needs to be done in the building. These 2 in particular will jump in wherever they're needed. They're welcoming the community. They're welcoming the kids every day. They know everyone's names. They know the families. They're making phone calls. They're talking to teachers. They're being instructional leaders. They're working on curriculum. They're problem solving. And I don't think I have to tell anyone that even though they were doing this before, that in addition to everything that the last 20 months has put on them has been extraordinary. And they come to work every day with a smile on their face. And they are just tremendous team members and tremendous leaders for our kids and our community. So I can't say enough about these 2 individuals, and I will, I'm sure, pale in comparison to the state of Illinois' proclamation. But on behalf of the district, we just thank you for everything you do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I do have to tell a cute story quick first. We've talked multiple times in the Hill household about how wonderful both of you are as principals. But this week after the Halloween parade, my 3rd grader said, "Mom, as the board, like, did you guys hire Mrs. Bay?" And I said, "No, we didn't, but we were very much in support of it. Dr. Leale did that." Well, she made a really good choice. And she was a really good M&M.
An extraordinary M&M. Yes, yes.
It was very cute.
A
Lot of loops.
Win-win.
Okay, well, per the state of Illinois, I'm going to read this proclamation. Whereas school principals play an integral role in the education and growth of children in elementary, middle, and secondary schools across the state of Illinois. And whereas school principals are responsible for promoting education and building relationships with parents and teachers to ensure that each child receives services that allow them to excel in the classroom. And whereas it is the primary responsibility of the state of Illinois to preserve and improve resources for schools so that all students have access to a quality education and a foundation for a successful future. And whereas educational leaders face many challenges in supporting and educating our young people, and it is through their perseverance and passion that Illinois continues to produce quality, career-ready students. And whereas the Illinois Principals Association, which represents over 6,000 educational leaders statewide, believes that learning is a lifelong process and that the education of our children is the highest priority. And whereas during the 2021-2022 school year, the Illinois Principals Association will celebrate 50 years dedicated to developing, supporting, and advocating for innovative school leaders. And whereas school principals and learning leaders have faced unprecedented challenges related to COVID-19 during the 1920 and 2021 school years, and worked tirelessly to provide uninterrupted learning during an ongoing pandemic. And whereas we must continue to encourage, support, and recognize our school leaders who have a positive impact on Illinois students and the educational system in the land of Lincoln. Therefore, I, J.B. Pritzker, Governor of the state of Illinois, do hereby proclaim the week of October 24 through 30, 2021, as Principals Week, and Friday, October 29, 2021, as Principals Day in Illinois. Is that why we took it off?
We're going to take a day off. want me to give them the whole day off. That's
To
right.
recognize principals for all that they do to help our children learn and succeed. I don't know why it has to be in ye, but the sentiment is the same. We all really, really appreciate you. Thank you.
It's hard to top JB Pritzker,
Right.
because I'm sure he wrote that himself. But I could at a very high level tell a story that illustrates how great. Kelly, unfortunately, my kids were here after you were here, but I can relate to Nate early on. I think he was a rookie principal when my first son was in the middle school, and we had a couple of learning moments together as parent and principal, which is kind of interesting. I could tell anybody the story offline maybe, but the one thing I would say is that both my kids, who spent a few moments in the principal's office over the years, always came out happy. They didn't, I don't understand that. When I came out of the principal's office as a kid, I was terrified. I was shook up. I was trembling.
Nothing
And
were ever in the principal's office.
No, well, what I've heard about.
Right.
But my kids who visited with Mr. Blackburn a few times came out like, I get it. I understand. I'm going to do better. I'm going to work. I know what I need to work. You know, it was like he has a knack. That was really nice and a very delicate testing. I appreciate that. And I'm sure it happened for other parents and kids as well. It's amazing how it's gone by fast. Okay, so we are going to move on to our reports. And do we have a PTO report? I don't see a PTO person here, but maybe online. No?
Shelley, do we have a report tonight?
I don't see Nicole on.
Okay. No Alliance report. Mr. Blackmore, do we have, or Kelly, do we have a principal's report tonight?
Gonna give it a shot with some multiple tech things going on here. So I'm bringing my computer because I'll also share my screen with those at home. First of all, thank you very much. I did not expect any proclamation. So thank you very much. It's a real privilege to be here and certainly be working in a district that even thinks to honor us in such a way. So thank you. I will go ahead and hopefully with, oh, Shelley, I'm afraid I'm screen sharing may be disabled. I'm wondering if you're able to project yours. Tell you what, I have an idea. Kelly, if we can pivot for just a second, maybe you do your presentation, we'll work out the technical difficulties and I'll be right back.
Look at us adapting and pivoting
Right?
right on the spot.
Said that like a pro.
That's right.
We've done this before. All right, I'm going low tech, just bringing up some notes so I don't forget the important things I want to share. First, thank you so much. I was not expecting any of that, and I won't use my whole time to just gush how much I appreciate each and every one of you and all of our families. I did ask Lisa if I would prefer to come in person tonight. It just felt like a good night to be here, and so it's even more special that I can look in your eyes, not through a screen. So thank you very much for all of the support. It means the world. Couple of updates tonight. I want to start with Pumpkin Fest. So we're winding a little bit. We couple highlights. Just want to thank First PTO. They dropped off some delicious pumpkin bread to kick off Pumpkin Fest. So each of our staff members got a loaf and mine was devoured quickly, and I'm pretty sure everyone else enjoyed it as well. So thanks to the PTO for that thoughtful and delicious gesture. Also want to acknowledge and thank families who came out on Friday night for our kickball game. We were able to bring that traditional event back. So they cheered on our red and orange teams as we played some silly kickball innings. So things like kicking with your opposite foot and running opposite around the bases, or 3 people kicking and then running in a line until all of the balls are returned back to the pitcher. So it was a gorgeous night, a great event, lots of enthusiasm and energy, and just appreciate not only our staff for planning it. Shout out to Ryan Regan. He spearheaded it with the support of a lot of other staff members, but it does take energy and work, but it definitely was a lot of fun. Want to shift into acknowledging this week, we are observing Red Ribbon Week at Lake Bluff Elementary School. So pardon my casual attire. Today was Sweats Day. So this is my abbreviated version of sweatpants and sweatshirt. Monday was These Paws Are Healthy, wear your favorite LBES spirit wear. Today is being healthy is easy. I eat wise and I exercise. Wear your favorite sweats. Tomorrow, you have superpowers. You can say yes to healthy decisions. Wear your favorite superhero clothing. And then Thursday, we're going to wrap up with I have big dreams and plans for my future. Wear your future jobs clothing or dress fancy, as our teachers will be dressing fancy for conferences. It feels fitting to be able to kind of tie all of that together. Just so you're aware, this event, which is always one you have to think intentionally, Red Ribbon Week, is a nationwide week where students celebrate healthy decisions, smart decisions, and healthy lifestyles. So we have themes and activities throughout the week to honor that. And a shout out to Jen Perlis Glassman, one of our social workers who helped to plan and promote this event. Lastly, want to just remind everyone again, we have parent-teacher conferences beginning tomorrow evening. So Wednesday night from 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. And then Thursday, conference block from 12 to 5, a break for dinner, and then extending on from 6 to 8 p.m. So we increased our evening slots with the hopes that that would be helpful to families so that we are catering to times that they are available. Parents were also given choice upon sign up to log in via Zoom or to come in person. We know for curriculum night, we really asked just one parent to come. It is okay for both parents to come during conferences. So we don't want to limit that opportunity for parents and teachers to connect. It really is a special night for parents to just continue the partnership and celebrate all of the learners within our school. Also, parents had an option if they would like to sign up for a block of time with our related arts or the wellness, art, music, Spanish teachers. It's another opportunity to just talk with those professionals in the building. Lastly, this just came out today. We're excited to share at conferences, the Lake Bluff Public Library will be on site to issue library cards to families who haven't gotten one yet or are in need of that. So we are just asking that a parent sign in order for that library card to be issued. So they'll be set up in the library at the elementary school. Just want to announce that. So thank you again for all of your support. Continues to be busy around the building, but there are really truly amazing things happening. So thank you to everyone. Any questions?
I'll just say that the staff kickball game was very fun to attend and watch too. It was great to see everybody out there and laughing and having a good time.
Agreed. So the staff felt the same way. Good energy. I think, and those that were wondering, I was on the red team and I do think that we won. Thank you.
Not that Ms. Bay is competitive at all. Nope.
All right, we've got the technical kinks worked out, I think, so I'll give it a second shot. But before I do, a couple of things that I wanted to make sure to mention before I forgot. In addition to the elementary school, Lake Bluff Middle School will also have an opportunity for students to pick up a library card during conferences. I know that Kelly and I will both be sending out an email with the times that the representatives from the library will be there for that. So something to look forward to. I want to definitely thank Mallory Jorgensen and Paige Soule for working with the Lake Bluff Public Library to get that set up. We're very excited about that. The other thing is that we have a dance coming up, our first dance of the year at Lake Bluff Middle School. It's been talked about a lot. It's a student council sponsored event, and there's been some back and forth about things related to that dance. It's going to be Friday night, November 5th from 7 to 9. Initially, it was not going to be a costume dance, and then there was some feedback from kids that it should be, and so there's some that still feel it should. Here's what we're going to do. It's going to be optional, costume optional dance. If kids would like to, it's wear what you feel comfortable with, and if you feel comfortable in a Halloween costume that night, we are going to warmly welcome you. And if you prefer not to wear one, then we will welcome that as well. But I'm looking forward to getting back to in-person sort of events like this. So just wanted to make sure to pass that along. And you heard it first. It'll be pushed out tomorrow to the students, the costume optional arrangement. So I'm gonna shift gears a little bit, and I wanted to just spend a few minutes talking about some changes that have occurred to our programming traditionally known as advisory. We've adopted some new things and made some changes, and I wanted to make sure to let the board know about that. We have an outstanding committee of folks that have worked over the last year roughly to make these changes. Their names appear here. In addition to myself and Mr. Jaxie, we have Carly Quick, Sarah Coleman, Janet Engel-Julian, Heather Comack, Karina Huddleston, and Maureen Sostak, all representing different departments, different grade levels, different subject areas. So we've got a great group of passionate folks who've helped make some of these recommendations that we're implementing throughout the year, and I'll highlight them. First of all, advisory is something that, at least a term that parents who've had students at the middle school are probably familiar with. The focus for advisory, however, has shifted a bit. We are really working to implement a lot of our SEL, that's social emotional learning, programming into that time. That's first part of every day. We're also going to still be utilizing that time for conference prep, and there's been a lot of conference prep going on over the last couple of weeks. The advisor is still the point person for parents, and will still be the person that they're going to be meeting with during the student-led conferences. But outside of that sort of conference prep time, a lot of these social emotional learning lessons and activities that we hope to reinforce throughout the day are being delivered during that first part of the school day. I'll come back and talk a little bit more about that in a minute here. But I wanted to just highlight the goals of the Lbms social emotional learning programming. First and foremost is to guarantee a viable curriculum that's available to all students. And we want to provide a foundation and common language that can be reinforced throughout the school day. It is not simply the advisor's responsibility or not simply that period of time in the day in which social emotional learning occurs. We know it happens throughout the day. But by starting our day that way and really having it fresh in everybody's mind, it's a great opportunity for teachers and students alike to dive in and incorporate that into their day-to-day classes and lessons. Let's talk a little bit about the afternoon, and that's where we have traditionally had a morning advisory and an afternoon advisory. And so there are several phases. We're actually calling them Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3, and I'll talk about the differences. But things that are occurring in the afternoon include some of our interventions and support, extended learning opportunities. If you have a middle school student, you probably know them more commonly as ELOs. I'll talk about that more as well. And then everything in between. Here's a more extensive list of some of those in-between things that I'm talking about. When you think of extended learning opportunities, this is enrichment, this is reteaching, this is content-focused support, setting up for success. Essentially, teachers have the opportunity to reach out to students in their classes to ask them to come in and see them at the end of the day. Typically, it's to provide any one of those things I've just mentioned. It's also an opportunity for students perhaps to go and see a teacher they might need to spend a little additional time with. Maybe they have a question about an upcoming assessment or something that didn't go well on their homework. It's an opportunity for teachers or students to also reach out and meet with their teachers. Every content area teacher has a day of the week in which they're doing their ELOs. We're going to be rolling out something that we're also calling target ELOs. I'll spend some time on that too. But those targeted ELOs are going to be an opportunity for us to really focus a little bit more on some specific student skills that maybe aren't getting delivered in other parts of the day. Part of what we wanted to do with these Act 2 and 3s are that opportunity to get to know kids and really hone in on what it is they might benefit from. MTSS, that's well, you've probably gotten quite a few presentations on this, multi-tiered systems of support. That's where some of our students are getting academic support to try and improve their reading or math ability. That still is happening during this X block, as we're going to be calling it in the afternoon. So Act 1, we're in the midst of. We have already implemented the SEL programming in the morning. ELO, as we've traditionally done it, has started at the beginning of September. MTSS began at the beginning of October. So those are things that we have traditionally done during our advisory time. And this has also been an opportunity for us to get to know where our students are with the skills and what kind of programs we can add in and layer on to support the needs that may not already have a support in place for them. So that's our Act 2. We're going to be adding to our MTSS support more general ed instruction there. Traditionally, our MTSS has been delivered by our student services team. And this is going to provide us with an opportunity to partner our gen ed teachers with some of those student service team members to really get a handle on the interventions that are being delivered. It'll also free up some of our student services team members to be doing some of the other more targeted ELOs that we're working on for phase 3. But we're really excited about that. MTSS is not supposed to be simply a special ed initiative, but a general ed component to it as well. And we're really going to be more intentional about that. And also throughout this second act, if you will, it's a fun acronym, SUFS, set up for success. It's an opportunity for us to really bring in some more kids and help to, help with the organizational skills, help with the executive functioning skills. That's been rolled out into the second phase as well. Now, Act 3, this is something we hope to launch shortly after winter break. This is where we really are jumping into the full X block. Kids are probably still coming home and talking about X block already. We're really trying to differentiate the morning advisory from the afternoon by having a fully different name. It also worked out very well because it might technically be considered a 10th period, but we kind of like the alliteration of X block as opposed to 10th period. Anyway, this is where we're going to hopefully be able to regroup our kids, really looking for things that might be possible extensions for them, but also spending some really deliberate time focusing on skill sets where kids could really benefit. And here's some of the examples of things that we would be doing with that targeted ELO. It could be reading and math support for students scoring between the 26th and 60th percentile. So that's kind of picking up the kids that are not necessarily qualifying for MTSS, but sort of the kids are just above that. So we want to be able to also be working with those guys, not just simply leaving them out of some of that additional support because they didn't meet the qualification for MTSS. Executive functioning that I've already mentioned. Bluffer booster. This is a great, in fact, I did a face mask bluffer booster impromptu earlier this week. It's just a great opportunity to do some reteaching. And so for some kids, it may be more than just a lesson as I was this week, but trying to really focus on some of the basic we've got kids right now who hadn't learned middle school. They hadn't learned how to get from point A to point B. They hadn't learned the processes and the procedures for being a middle school student. And so we're realizing some of that reteaching is going to be in order. That's a perfect opportunity for our Bluffer Booster targeted ELO. Social emotional learning support beyond just sort of the advisory piece, but counseling groups and just getting kids together with some common interests. And then, of course, we'll continue with our traditional ELO and set up for success. That was a lot. It was meant to be short, I apologize. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
That sounds awesome. I don't have any questions, but I think it's a phenomenal idea. I'm excited about it.
We've got a really talented group of advisors, and this takes and really capitalizes on their talents as advisors, but also incorporates a lot of the other specialists in the building and gives the opportunity for some flexible grouping where we need it, because there's definitely times in the year where kids are going to need different things. And it's also, kids are going to, I think, enjoy the opportunity to be regrouped periodically and not always with the same group of kids. So we're looking forward to it. Yeah.
Will this target kids like gifted?
Yep, there'll be some extensions and enrichment opportunities that we'll weave in there as well. Yep, that's part of it.
I got an idea for a future conversation, like one of your presentations is, and maybe this only applies to me. If that's the case, then forget it. But I'm really curious about what is social emotional learning instruction, or how that is worked into these morning and afternoon sessions. What does that even look like?
Yeah.
Having my kids been out of the program for a while, and it was just becoming a thing when we were there. And so I'd be very curious to see what that looks like. So might be a topic for a different day.
Absolutely. Happy to talk more about that. One thing I failed to mention, probably because Andy wasn't sitting right there, but it's also a time that we're working with students and reminding them to do a survey called a Bloom is the name of it. It's a tool that we're utilizing that was developed by LEAD that allows us to just check in on kids. It gives them the opportunity to say, hey, this is how I am today. I'd like to, I kind of feel this way, or I'd love somebody to check in with me today because I'm feeling this way. And it's a great resource that we are pleased to have and grateful that Andy helped us put it into place. I know elementary is using it and many other districts in the area are as well. So
Do both schools do the kids still fill that out first thing in the morning?
yep, and we're getting our reports. They're not required to, but we're reminding them to let's do that. Let's get it out. Even if you don't have any concerns, it's nice to have that balance to see kind of where we are as a student body. So Mr. Jackson and I have spent some time looking at the reports and certainly working with teachers as they field kids who are saying, yeah, I'd like to check in. So it's just another resource for kids. It's great at their fingertips.
I just want to emphasize, like in middle school philosophy, social, emotional, and emotional well-being is definitely a big part of what we do as middle school educators in a normal year. And so I appreciate the work that the team has put in to figure out even some additional supports and some different additional restructuring, additional ways to group kids to not only address the academic pieces that we knew were coming, but also kind of that they haven't been to middle school yet. We haven't really seen all the things, and things are still a little bit different. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of new learning for everybody. I think it's great for kids.
it's been exciting to have conversations with other middle school principals in the area because advisory and social emotional learning are always a hot topic. What are you doing? How is it working for you? Can I learn more from your school? And so we hope to maybe take the show on the road and someday because it's definitely, there's a need out there.
It's a great program.
Yep. Thank you.
I actually have a silly question that's a little bit off topic, but since you're here. Pre-COVID, I think this was a thing, right? Wasn't the musical announced at Halloween and the staff dressed up like is that happening again?
It's
or we
coming.
know-
It is
okay.
coming. We've got a little bit of a different format, which requires some editing and sound and video. And it's not necessary, but it's soon.
I had lunch with
No
two 8th
pressure.
grade boys today who said they know what the musical is. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't even know what the musical is, but they said some hints are being dropped.
They think,
Apparently,
they
Mrs.
think they
C
know it.
is dropping some hints and they were fairly certain they know what it is.
Sometimes the anticipation and the guessing is the most enjoyable
Yeah.
part. So
Yeah.
we'll get it out there. I apologize. I don't have a date to share with
That's
you. yet.
okay. That's right. That's awesome.
Great, thank you. Mr. Khan, is there a report from the business office tonight? No. Okay.
The only thing I will say is the audit is complete. I got the first draft, or I got the final drafts of everything today. So the auditor is coming next meeting to present it, and I'll be passing out copies between now and
Oh,
then.
boy. That'll be fun.
Great.
Thanks. Anything from Mrs. Rorick and Student Services tonight? I don't know if she's with
Yes.
us. She is. Hi, Tracy.
Hello. All right. So at the last, I believe it was the last board meeting, Mark had asked about some trends for enrollment for the past 10 years. So Jay had put together and keeps track of enrollment in this nice chart. And so we were very easily able to go back and look at our enrollment trends for the past 10 years. So as you can see from this chart, if you look in the total enrollment column, our enrollment has gone down over the years, all the way down to 825 students in a given year, and then all the way up to, I believe, 905 students. And it's kind of fluctuated, gone up and down in between those, that low and that high throughout the years. You'll see that in the 2014-15 school year, that was when we added our pre-K 3 and pre-K 4 blended preschool programming, which added some students to the district. So, and then I believe it was in the 2018-19 and 2019-20 that we had an extra half-day pre-K 3 and pre-K 4 class, which also increased our enrollment a little bit in those years.
Interesting.
So there's less fluctuation than I thought.
Mhm,
It's been fairly in that range, in a fairly narrow range.
mhm.
And Mark, in looking back even further, I think there were years, more than a decade ago where the enrollment was much higher, but since, in the last 10 years, it's fluctuated just a bit each year.
Yeah, because when I first came on the board, they used to talk about the days. Remember the days when it was 1,200 kids or whatever it was, 1,100 something kids, and so. Yeah, it's interesting to say that we can say over the past 10 years, there really hasn't been a huge variation.
Right.
Any questions on that?
All right.
That might be something good to have available on our website somewhere. Like a chart that just kind of changes over time that shows.
Mhm.
Like a dashboard?
Yeah. Because that's one of those questions that kind of comes up. People are curious about.
There is a chart in our annual financial reports.
Oh, cool.
And we know that a lot of people access that on a regular basis.
It's the number one most viewed spot on our website.
Yeah.
The audit, yeah.
That one particular page of the audit. Definitely.
Thanks, Tracy. Any questions for Mrs. Rorick? That's good to know. I appreciate it. That's useful information. Because that'll actually segue into Dr. Leally's superintendent's report. We're going to tag team a little bit on a conversation we had with Drew Irvin and
Regis?
Regis Charlot from the village recently.
Yes. Do you have anything for yours before I go?
You go first.
Okay.
No, I
Um,
don't. I'll just chime in.
Okay, sounds good. Before I go into that meeting, Shelley's going to have some notes on the screen about that meeting. But before that, I just want to do a little bit of a COVID update because we got some really exciting news today. Obviously, I think people have been following along. The FDA has preliminarily approved emergency use authorization for the COVID vaccine for school-age children 5 to 11. It still does need to go through CDC approval, so we're still waiting for one more piece, but we're anticipating that that will happen at some point next week. I do want to let everyone know that we're continuing to work on getting testing up and running in the district. We're hoping in the next 2 weeks that that will be happening for us with Passport Health. We are also working with the Village of Lake Forest to set up a vaccine clinic, and that should be coming mid-November. We're really appreciative of both villages who are working with both all 3 school districts to find an easy way to have our children vaccinated if parents would like to do so in the community. I think one big question for all of us is what happens, right? When kids get vaccinated, and I wish I could tell everyone exactly what was going to happen, but I don't have that answer right now. I can tell you that we've asked the health department for some guidance on this. I know that the Illinois Department of Health, everyone's sort of backing into what is this going to look like? At this point, we will continue to follow the CDC guidance, the Lake County Department of Health guidance on masking, on quarantines and things of that nature. We are seeing the numbers go down, which is a really great thing. At this point, we do know that children who are vaccinated in our district right now have a different set of rules and procedures that happen if they are exposed to a positive case. And I'm anticipating that would be the same, even for a young child that was vaccinated. They're not considered close contacts after exposure. They're not required to test. They can stay in school. So that's great. And we're anticipating that that won't change. Whether or not masking will continue for a while, I'm not sure, but I do anticipate that 6 weeks after the vaccine is ready for kids, when kids can be fully vaccinated after those doses, that we should see some updated guidance on that. I still continue to meet with the health department and ask those questions. Any questions on that?
This is more of a question for the CDC, but do we know if the kids' dosages are going to have to be manufactured separately? Like, is it a smaller reduced dose?
It is a smaller dose. I think it's a third of the dose, and it is packaged differently. This is what I've heard. It's packed in orange packaging. So if you're going in and you're going to get a vaccine for your child, you'd be looking for an orange package, because I think there's so much vaccine right now. They're nervous because it is a different dose. But the results have been really good on the trials. And I believe it was unanimously approved by the FDA with only one person abstaining. So there's a lot of.
Is that for Pfizer or Pfizer and Moderna, or?
That was for Pfizer at this point. And, we got word that, the booster shots are available. Moderna booster is approved. And now we also know that we can mix vaccines. If you're going to go for a booster, it doesn't matter which one you get, which is going to be very, very helpful for convenience sake if you're going to get a booster. I have heard also that if you are interested in getting a booster that is the same as the vaccine that you did, you can do that, but just call ahead and say, I'm really, preferring one or the other, or I'd like to stay with the one that I got before. Just call ahead and make sure that they have it. But it is, according to the studies that I've read, and they've now said it, I think the FDA said it, you can mix the booster shots, which should make it that much more convenient.
That's all good.
So let's hope that we're on the path to being done with some of this. So appreciate everyone's cooperation. I know this is still really difficult when you have to go for a quarantine, go for a test, and you have to do all those things. I appreciate our teachers still engaging in remote learning. This stuff is still happening. And hopefully we can phase that out. So the report that Mark and I are going to kind of tag team here is a meeting that we had, and I think these meetings happened before some time ago, and we're just sort of reinstating the small group, which is Mark and myself, as well as Regis Charlot and Drew Irvin, just kind of partnering the village and the school district together to bring each other up to speed on what we're all working on. And so some of the conversations that we had are listed here. First and foremost, it's really important for us as a school district to know what is being discussed in terms of new developments in our attendance area. And Stonebridge is one of those developments we've been talking about, I think, for a really long time. in the,
10
like a
years.
long, long time. Yeah. And the village, I think, is in the process of finalizing some issues they've had with the developer. And so we've been told that things may move forward. There was an economic impact review that was presented to the district some time ago, a few years ago, that will be represented to us for our feedback, but probably will need to be updated. And the village is going to be asking us for some updates to what we believe our maximum capacity is in terms of students.
That's why I thought it was a good idea to have that report from Tracy, because it kind of gives you a
Yes.
sense for where we're at.
That's right. And so but even though our enrollment goes up and down, there are some things that impact our capacity. There's sort of maximum capacity with all the efficiencies in place. And then there's capacity that's more like functional capacity, operational capacity based on some of these factors. Obviously, the smaller our class sizes are, the more rooms you need, programming impacts that. So as we've increased the need for ELL teachers or increased the need for interventionists or social workers, all those folks need space, not only for themselves, but also to give service to students. If the student needs increase, then again, minutes on IEPs or 504 plans increase, maybe small group testing or accommodations increase, and that increases our need for space just for the students that are here. And then obviously, if there are any mandates coming down the road, that would increase our need for space as well. And the one I'm thinking of right now is the potential for expanded early childhood and pre-kindergarten. Obviously, we have half-day programming, but if we were ever need to adjust to full-day programming, that would increase our need for space as well. So as Mark and I talked about in our small group, it's not quite as easy to just give a number, like we can handle this many per grade. And then obviously on the other end, from the developer and the village's end, it's hard to predict, right? No matter what the price point is and things like that, we don't know who's coming. We don't know what grades they would be in, and if that would be an even distribution. So the best we can do is kind of look at what we want to provide for our community, what's important to our community, and work with the developer and the village to figure out what those needs would be if that development were to happen.
We've had, in the past, we hired a demographer to do some estimates of where they thought the trend in school enrollment was going to go, and it was awful. It didn't come, I don't think it came close to where it went. And there's a lot of, apparently it's fairly controversial that they're not all that accurate, and it's a little bit like having a crystal ball. So there was a conversation at this meeting, do you want to hire a demographer and do that again? And so I don't know, we need to talk about that. If that science has evolved to the point where it's more accurate and we want to spend the money, I don't know.
And I've asked around, to districts in the county at least, and Jay and I have had a talk about how we've been doing it since the previous demographic report came out. And Jay's actually been our demographer for the last few years using a cohort model. So, and I think you've been fairly accurate. So we will have that discussion if we decide to go ahead with another update. And so we have some resources and things that we can talk through.
Yeah. The conversation went a little sideways in this regard too, because we also talked about, as Lisa suggested, programming and class size affects our capacity, right? How many kids we can put in the building. And on and off over the years, the subject of class sizes, particularly at the elementary school, has come up on occasion. And that kind of came out of this conversation about how we have always had this kind of, I'm not sure what the right word is, handshake agreement with the community, not even a handshake. I was going to say gentleman's agreement, but we're not supposed to say that anymore. Whatever the right word is for that type of thing now. Nothing in writing, just we've always tried to keep those class sizes at a very small, whatever the numbers were, low 20s, I think. And it's not based on science, right? It's based on expectations from the community. And I think people move here because they like those numbers, right? And so we kind of got into a little bit of a sidebar conversation about how if we were ever to try to accommodate more kids and looking at the grade class sizes, that's a significant thing to talk about, because you could present science that says there's no benefit to having class sizes this small, but when the community expects it and people move here because of that, and it's a cultural thing, you can't just change it. So if that could lead to a strategic planning conversation. So it just kind of, it snowballs into a lot of other things that we need. And within Lisa and I had a little sidebar that we do need to kind of get the ball rolling on strategic planning, planning for strategic planning over the next several months. Because
If I recall, when we did the last strategic plan, small class sizes came out as like the number one.
Yeah, it's a big
thing
deal.
that
You
people
can't just change it without talking to the whole community. Yeah.
felt was very important. Yeah.
So whatever, and you can see that kind of almost last bullet there is the strategic plan. And when we do that, I'm sure that the board would be supportive of including people from the village and the community outside of just the users to help us determine that vision and to know the impacts if we decide to keep our class sizes very small, or what that range is doing to our capacity in the end.
One thing that comes to mind that is important about all this conversation about development, Stonebridge as one example, but it could be several other things, is that a large development, there's a thing called impact fees, which a developer will pay to they actually pay to the village, and the village on our behalf administers those fees, which those fees are negotiated and they're subject to conversations with committee at the village. We have to make sure that we stay involved in that conversation to represent our needs and make our arguments known. To put it plainly, we were not all that involved in the past. I've always felt like we should. After this meeting, I had another conversation, a coffee with Regis Charlo separately and Paul Greenfield from the Park District. And I specifically asked, can we would like to be involved and represented at the table when it comes to impact fee conversations with developers. And Regis said, I think that makes sense. So that is something that needs to be developed, but that's a big reason to pay attention to this stuff, because if we have to add a wing to a school to accommodate kids, this is where some of that money comes from.
Absolutely. And I think that theme is continued in the next bullet point of the village is looking at a zoning tool that I think was developed in the 80s. They were saying it's a long, long time ago that this instrument was
really old.
developed to kind of figure out where which areas of the village should be developed for what purposes. And so it's under review at this point. And there are some other village committee opportunities, but what we had asked about was, can we be representative? Can we be at the table or included in any of that? And I think there is, a genuine wanting to do that and collaborate together. So if you are interested in looking at any of those things, please let me know. And I'll get your name over to the village and we can get you included on some of the emails so that you can be a part of it.
I'm looking at the architect over here.
I nominate you anyway, Tim. So good. Excellent. That's great. Thanks, Tim. And then we also, and we had talked about this before, Jay and I had a meeting with Drew, and I forgot, it was a while ago, but we had talked about kind of reconvening a committee that we had before on looking at pedestrian projects and safe routes to schools. And it's sort of like a wish list project. Like if we could envision the village the way we would want it for all of our students, they have an ability to get to school without driving. How would we do that? And there are some ways that the village might be able to partner or try to find monies outside of the village or us to be able to engage in some of these projects. But we would want to get the community involved in those discussions as well. And obviously are very much in support of the village pursuing funding for the viaduct project. They haven't been approved yet, but that would be a major.
That's huge. That's all they
big
talk
deal,
about right
yeah,
now.
for us as a town, even though we can shift to remote learning on a dime now, we'd rather not. So I think it obviously would be a great impact for the entire village. And
I think they're looking at, what did he say? It's something like 16 or 17 million dollars in spending, I think, to create the necessary drainage from the viaduct out to the lake. And it's quite a bit larger than their annual budget.
really big project.
So it's huge. They're struggling with the money.
And then finally, just talking through, we had previous to me being here, there had been a tri-board committee with the Park District, the school district, and the village, where the leadership positions from those organizations would get together and talk through things that impacted all of the organizations together. I do meet with those managers and administrators, but getting the elected officials on board, I think, would be a great idea. And I think previous conversations were really beneficial and productive. And so we'd like to get that going as well.
That's where the idea for the that newsletter came from. The community newsletter that we do with the other taxing bodies. I think that stems from the tri-board committee. So I have also had just to tag on to this, I had coffee with Regis Charlo and Paul Greenfield, who's the Park District. They don't call him a president, they call him their commissioners. Maybe he is the president of the Park District Commissioners. And I've always done that historically with the two board presidents, just to have casual off the record conversations, because it's a really great way to kind of stay in touch and be able to pick up the phone if we have a question that we want to talk about on the side. And I came away from that concerned for them, but happy for us, because they're really struggling financially. This VITA, I mean, everybody's finances, if you look at it at a snapshot in time, are really strong. But they have these long-term big projects that they have to deal with that are huge, that are they've got to figure out. You know, the viaduct project in the village and the beach, the pool at the Park District. And now the Park District is also having conversations about this flooding issue that may be working with the county, maybe not. And so they've got a lot on their plate. And so there was some interesting conversations about how can we, as three taxing bodies, be respectful of taxpayer dollars, because taxpayers don't, when it comes down to it, they look at the bottom line on their tax bill, right? They don't really get mad at, some people do, but in general, most people don't get mad at individual districts. It's like, I just can't afford to spend this much money overall. And so how can we work together to show that we are being respectful and considering what we do and what we spend in light of each other? You know, one thing that keeps coming up is you never want to go to, one district never wants to go to referendum at the same time as another. You're competing for their money on a big project, and to keep each other in the loop and aware of when we have a big capital project coming up and we need to go out for referendum, and make sure that we time it right, work with the other district, and even keep in mind out what the high schools might be doing, you know, because that still impacts Bluff, like Bluff Villager. So it was a good conversation. They have, we always have challenging issues, but they've got some significant financial challenges ahead of them. I don't mean to scare anybody, like their finances on a snapshot are really strong, but long-term, they've got some stuff to figure out. It was good. We're going to do that fairly regularly. Questions, comments, concerns? All right, discussions and presentations. Dr. Leali is going to talk about her goals and objectives for the 21-22 school year. We did have a little bit of a closed session, just for people watching, closed session about this last week, where we got into some of the specific details. We're allowed to have closed session conversations about employees and things like that. But at a high level, Dr. Leali will outline what we do and how we're going to do it with the superintendent, because as a board, our only employee is the superintendent. We are not responsible for hiring and personnel in any other regard.
Yes, thank you. So yes, we have talked about this, and we did a little bit of talking about it last year, because we implemented a new tool that we'll be continuing to utilize this year. But as Mark said, the Board of Education is responsible for evaluating me as your superintendent. The best case scenario would be that it would be an evidence-based evaluation. So there's evidence in there of the criteria that I'll be measured against. Obviously, within any evaluation, providing timely and relevant feedback is most important, so that I can adjust if there's anything that I need to address. And hopefully that it would result in one evaluation, one comprehensive evaluation that represents the feedback from each individual board member in a cohesive document. So moving on to my goals. So there's room in the evaluation for me to be able to put goals in there that aren't necessarily national or leadership goals, but are specific to our district. And these are the 3 goals that I was evaluated on last year. These are the goals that are in my contract. They were in there when I was hired. And so evaluating student performance based on assessments and completion of curricular goals and rates of attendance, reviewing the curriculum and instructional services, and implementing a guaranteed viable program for each school year, and then reporting to the board on each of those pieces. And in the 3rd bullet, we've already started. So as you remember, a couple of board meetings ago, we had started presenting on board goal 1 and board goal 6, which have to do with not only student achievement and growth, but also programming and the adjustments that we would like to make to climate and culture, as well as social emotional learning, so that we can improve academic achievement and growth for students. And I propose that we continue with those goals for this year, as the assessment data this year will be more of a baseline than what we were working with last year.
That might be, that brings me back to my question about a presentation on social emotional learning to the board. That might be helpful in that regard.
Absolutely.
We don't always know what you guys are talking about. So to learn a little bit about it might be helpful.
I think it's a great goal. And then aside from those 3 goals, there are competencies that I'll be evaluated on that are listed here. And each of those competencies are grouped under a big subcategory. And so the first is the relationship that I have with you as a board. And you can see this incorporates providing you information, materials and background, answering your questions, helping with policy development and implementation, and then providing you with professional development or resources that you need to make good decisions. The second category has to do with relating to the community, making sure that there's a positive image of the district out in the community, that I'm communicating well, that we're monitoring our media relations, public relations, and then that the community feels that they can approach me with any concerns or questions that they might have. The third area is my interaction with staff, internal communications, and making sure that everyone's aware of important things that are happening. Obviously addressing human resource or personnel issues that utilize my team well. And so delegating the responsibilities where they belong, recruiting, attracting and recruiting quality people for our openings, and then being visible when I can in buildings and classrooms. In the area of business and finance, supporting, Jay and I working together on budget development and maintenance, budget reporting, managing our facilities, and allocating resources well. And that really is a team effort. Jay obviously does a lot of the work in this area and keeps me informed. But we talk a lot about these aspects of the district and what we think are priorities and where we want to make sure that our resources are supporting our students and programs. And then finally, in the area of instructional leadership. So, personally demonstrating a knowledge of current instructional programs, keeping myself up to date with current issues, focusing on students, making sure that we have good goals as a district, developing our staff, and making sure that our curriculum is up to date and current. So this is the comprehensive list. In each of those areas, you'll be able to rate me. So each of those individual criteria in each of those areas, you'll be able to provide a rating. And I will be providing you with evidence in each of those areas. And then like I did last year, I'll be providing kind of a crosswalk between Dr. Sophie's evaluation, which had even more criteria on it. So that if there's something that you feel like you'd like to address, but you don't see it in those competencies, you would hopefully see it in that crosswalk and be able to make a comment in the correct area. Always welcome any of the feedback. So last year we did this just at the end of the year. And this year we're proposing to do this process twice, once at the mid-year so that I can be provided any information to make any mid-course corrections that might need to be made. And then sort of a final or end of year evaluation that would begin in March. Both would include a self-evaluation. So I would rate myself on each of those criteria. You would be able to see that prior to providing your own rating. And then I will have evidence in each of those areas as well.
Can I just jump in here for a second? I want to clarify something that you said. We're doing a mid-year evaluation this year. We also did one
You're right.
last year. I don't want to make
It's
it
a different
sound like
process.
we've implemented that because we're keeping a close eye on it.
That's
because
right.
there's problems. There's not a problem.
Yes.
It's just we did a mid-year last year in a less formalized way. And we're going to formalize it using this piece of software that we have. It's a little easier to do.
Thank you.
So
for
just
reminding
we
me.
want to make sure that everybody knows that there's nothing came up that necessitated a mid-year review.
Appreciate it. And I did appreciate the mid-year feedback last year, as even though it was pretty informal, it was
Yep.
very helpful to me. So are there any questions on that?
Anybody?
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Okay.
Item B is an update on the formerly known as NSSED, the North Shore Special Education District, now known as True North Educational Cooperative 804.
And we are officially members of True North Educational Cooperative 804. This is a screenshot of our website. So we now have the official badge on our website and a link directly to their organization, which was kind of hard to find before. And we're really trying to make sure that people know that this is an organization that we work with on behalf of our students. And Mark and I both thought it would be a good idea just to kind of give some basic information so that you have an idea of the investment that we make in True North. And so we're starting kind of with a financial look at it. And I'm going to ask Jay to kind of give us a little bit of background on this chart because it looks like we've spent more money in the last few years, but it really has to do with the new funding model and how we're being charged as a district. So I'm going to let the people on the finance committee from True North talk a little
Good
bit
luck
about that.
understanding this on your first pass through, by the way. Just give me a heads up.
So first of all, it does, I actually also have a chart that goes back even farther, and we have spent it fluctuates, the amount we spend fluctuates based on the types of students we get and whether we can meet their needs at the district. And there's been a lot of work done recently, especially by Dr. Rubenstein and now by Tracy, to bring kids into the least restrictive environment in the district. So we spend a lot less recently than we did even 10 years ago. So one of the reasons that you see in the last 3 years, the bars are going up is because we've outsourced some staff. So we have a psychologist who we chose not to hire on our staff because we thought the need was temporary. True North hired them and basically are contracting them out to us. And that was last year and the year before. And then this year, we also have a special education teacher who is under the same arrangement. So kind of pulling those out, those are each about $100,000 each, or $100,000 in the first 2 years and $200,000 in the last year. And then those little orange bars have to do with funding from the federal government. So we used to, the way our agreement was between True North and all the districts, they would retain a portion of our federal funding. So it would go straight to them. And the federal government didn't like that arrangement and basically started enforcing the rule that all the money needs to flow to the district and the district needs to decide how to spend the money. So starting in that first year, 2019-20, the money, all that money came to the district. And so those orange bars, we were actually spending them in the prior years, but we were not receiving them and spending them. It was going straight to.
It was like a
So
pass through, or it was like.
It's kind of a pass through, kind of like our pension funding.
It was very shady, the way it
So
was.
this is a lot more
before.
transparent. We know, we can choose how we want to spend the money. We know exactly what our special education programs are costing. Whereas in the past, some of it was hard to understand because there's money that we weren't ever seeing. So that's.
The finance situation at NSSCD prior to 3 years ago was a bit of a black box.
Right.
Money went in, you don't know what happened to it, and stuff came out. It was-
And even as
it's
it
not-
is,
it's
that
very
gray bar
different
is as a percentage of operating expenses, and you can see that, I don't know if you can read the scale on the right, but the top this year is at 3.5% of our total operating expenditures. And we were operating around 1.5% before.
Yeah. I'd be curious to see what that, I'm not asking to do this, because I'm sure it'd be a ton of work. But if we knew what the IDEA money that they retained in all those prior years were, then those bars would be a lot more level, I would imagine. But
So to
yeah.
give some perspective, it's a small percentage of our operating budget, but I do, and we'll talk next about the services that are provided to our students with that amount of money. And so like Jay talked about, we have one full-time employee who's completely devoted to social emotional learning support for our students across the district. She's helping develop a tier 1 social emotional learning curriculum, doing some coaching for an essential skills program, coaching for behavioral support. So in other words, supporting our general education teachers with job embedded professional development. She's in the classrooms, supporting with directly with how to make sure our classroom environments are correct, and then providing some direct service for students. And then we also have modified self-contained or co-teaching support with our kindergarten class this year. We've added a teacher through True North to support with that co-teaching model. On the next slide, they also provide some other services.
Just
Go ahead.
on the prior slide, is that all out of their LEA program?
That's the LAA contracts. Yep.
I forget what the LEA is. Do you remember what LEA stands for? Something. They're.
Tracy, do you know? Are
They're
you
a
still on the call?
placement. They're a placement.
Yes, it's local education authority.
Yeah. And so they act like a placement company, right? They
Yes.
help recruit and find talent, and then we pay them for that talent.
And like Jay said, we thought those would be temporary situations. We're evaluating. We think we will be able to kind of not have that support moving forward, but we're still evaluating. Some other services provided by True North. We offer physical therapy to address IEP minutes, vision itinerant services. Our audiological services are actually through NSSEO, but that's still kind of a cooperative arrangement that having to do with the True North and that group of districts. When any student comes in needing assistive technology, either an evaluation or consultation on what technology might be appropriate to support them in the classroom, True North helps us with that. And then also with professional development. So our CPI or crisis intervention and prevention training that we need for our many of our staff members and teaching assistants. We have an inclusive practices cohort of teachers doing professional development very regularly to support their work with students with significant needs. And then the Beyond Foundations cohort is a group that's been in place for a while, talking about positive behavior supports or making sure that we're preventatively looking at our routines and making sure that our culture and climate are supporting positive behaviors in each of our buildings. And then moving on to the next slide, some other direct, we obviously have some students who receive off-site education and support from 3 True North schools and North Shore Academy, North Shore Academy Elementary, and Maple School, which is the SAIL program for students with autism. So we have 3 students receiving those services.
So as NSSED, True North, sorry, is evolving, right? Their current soup is a very modern in his approach to special education, and the whole idea that governs almost everything he does is trying to get kids back into their home district to the greatest extent possible. And there's always going to be a need for some of this brick and mortar stuff, the academies, but you can always do better about getting more kids service in their home district because there's tons of research to support that. So effectively what we did is we hired this new guy and said, can you almost put us out of business, right? Because put most of the kids back in their home district. And so they're also trying to grow the old school traditional services that they provide, these brick and mortar kind of services, and grow their LEA program, the personnel piece of the business that they shop out, as well as unique and new services. And so Tracy and special ed directors and SUPs from around the 18 member districts meet with them every year, and they brainstorm about what do they need? What's hot? What do they need training in? And so the cooperative is developing curriculum and courses and coaching in all those areas as a new source of revenue. So they're trying to find ways to offset as they do their job and send more and more kids back to their home districts. How can they still make themselves relevant and viable? So it's a big challenge for them that they struggle with, but they're moving forward. So it's.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The organization is really invested in best practice. And as now I am representing a northern region of school districts that are involved with True North. So I represent Highland Park, Deerfield District 109, the High School District 113, the Lake Forest districts, and Bannockburn. So I sit on the leadership council for those groups, along with 2 other superintendents that are representative of the other districts in the cohort. Mark is also a representative on the leadership council. And so we will try to provide some updates as to what current events are happening. But definitely, I appreciate Mark's thoughts on this, because you've been sitting on the leadership council for a long time. And I think the mission of True North is definitely changing. And there will be a strategic planning process coming up with them as well. And I think it would be great for us to be really as involved as possible in that and just support their efforts. We've done tremendous.
When we hired Kurt Snyder is the name of the superintendent there. When we hired Kurt 6 years ago, something like that, basically we asked him to blow up NSSED and rethink it, reinvent it. And he's done that. And one of the first things he did in the first couple of years was a whole new strategic plan. And it was huge and very aggressive. And he's torn through it. And it's time for another rethink of all that. So it's the next phase of where they're headed. And so that's going to commence pretty soon.
Yeah, we're really, really proud and happy with the partnership. So some recent things that have come up. So we just talked about LEA contracts. The council is looking into ideas just for more clearly documenting the arrangements that they would have with districts for hiring personnel and some of the intricacies around that for both the district and True North. So just making sure both sides are protected when these arrangements happen in terms of staffing issues or shortages or anything like that.
Because they ask each district in February to give them an estimate of their needs in terms of personnel and student placements. And that's how they do their planning. That's how they hire for the upcoming year, and they do their budgeting. And so if a district changes its mind or doesn't fulfill its obligations in terms of what it committed to in those February planning meetings, sometimes True North gets put in a situation where it has to absorb costs that it hadn't planned to. So, and all that, it is part of the new the whole finance model has been changed. And so there's a lot of learning going on. This is the first year that they're running through a whole new year under that new finance model. So there's some growing pains. There's some things that they're figuring out this first year that will be figured out. And Jay's part of that finance committee with me, and we're doing a lot of that work and having meetings fairly regularly. So it's normal for any new situation, I think.
Yep. We've been receiving a lot of information. True North and District 113 are looking into a lease agreement for True North to rent some space in the District 113 for a community-based learning environment. So for students who are transitioning out of public education to have experiences in the community, sort of working as apprentices or working in community close by, to have some real life experiences and connections in the community. And I think that's going to be a great partnership. As Mark said, this is really the first year that we are living the updated finance model that's been in development for a really long time. And so as it's coming out, there's definitely some kinks that are going to be worked out and we're talking about as a leadership group. And then they're also looking to house a dashboard on their website with financial and educational information, because they're looking to make their goals a little bit more transparent and show the member districts how students are progressing, how the organization is progressing, just kind of giving a real time or at least every couple of months update on how they're progressing, which I think is really great.
They're struggling with, not struggling, but they need to invent metrics
Yeah.
for how do kids who are undergoing these kinds of programs progress. Like, 'cause you don't measure them the same way that you measure a typical gen ed program. And so it'll be interesting to see what they come up with to show forward progress, because they want to be held accountable.
It's a great organization. We have held our profile meeting. As Mark said, we meet lots of times every year. The superintendent group meets, the finance group meets. I'm also part of an advisory council, so a smaller part of the leadership council that meets regularly. I meet with our member districts from the northern region, and then True North comes and meets with each district to talk about their needs 3 times a year. So kind of what are they working on? And then mid-year, we'll talk about projections, and then end of year, we kind of talk about how things went. So they're highly invested in the success of every district, of every student being in their home district with their peers and their neighbors, and providing as much authentic and community-based education as possible in keeping with best practice. So just wanted to provide you an update on what we're talking about currently. See if you had any questions.
I have a quick question.
Mhm.
The kindergarten class that we're doing a self-contained and a co-teaching, I never hear those 2 terms necessarily together. So are we doing mixing kids in a kindergarten class?
It's a modified self-contained, but I'm gonna let Tracy chime in here a little bit on why we use those 2 terms together, if she wouldn't mind hopping on.
Yeah, so for the majority of the school day, the students are included in a general education classroom, and there's a co-teaching model, but there are some brief times in the day where the students do go to work on their own goals that they have in their own plans with a learning behavior specialist or with some of their related service providers, such as speech and language therapists, occupational therapists, social workers, physical therapists.
And so are those kids go to is that the self-contained piece?
Yes, when they're pulled out to work on those specific IEP goals, that's when they go to their own classroom for those brief times of day.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions on that? All right, so now Dr. Lealy again will give us an update on the Thrive Task Force.
Well, I am going to tag team this one with Tracy because Tracy and I are really co-facilitating the work with the Thrive Subcommittee. And we were able to have our second meeting in October. We have some next steps planned out. Ann and Andy are our board reps on that committee. So also, Ann, please chime in if you feel like there's anything there, but I'm going to let Tracy go through our agenda, and then you can ask any questions on our progress.
Yeah, so we did meet in October in order to really convene our group to start the work. Our first meeting was really focused on presenting the district's current reality and some background information. And this meeting was really to set the tone and the foundation for our future meetings where our members will really dig into this work. And so we started with a thank you. We were very fortunate to have many people return to our group to continue in this work. So we appreciate all of the teachers, administrators, community members who are willing to dig into this with us. As part of our survey that we completed after our first session, we had each of the people who filled out the survey mark some different agreements that we felt that each of our members should follow as we move forward in this work. So you see this, the agreements that each of our members agreed to in terms of moving forward. So staying engaged and on task, maintaining confidentiality of personal stories, knowing that many people were going to be sharing things from their background as we meet again, communicating clearly and listening carefully, respecting the views of others, asking and welcoming questions for clarification, being open to the ideas and views of others, and then honoring time limits and making sure that we're staying on task as we work through this process. We also had Maureen Powers, who is our consultant and working with us on this initiative, outline the work and the process for the work so that the team of people that are meeting would really get a sense of the flow of the work and what we're going to be digging into over the next months and years. Then we looked at some words that were important to us, mostly being the thrive, the word thrive. So breaking down each of the words in the word thrive and having the members of our stakeholder group talk through what each of those words means to them so that we can begin to develop some common definitions of those words. And then we developed some next steps. So in terms of next steps, our task force, we are looking at each of those definitions for each of those words. We're compiling what each of the members said and creating a definition, a common definition, and building consensus around those definitions. We have set some dates and times for next meetings where our subgroups will begin to work on some of the various pieces under some categories that we talked about. So in the meeting, we talked about a few different areas of strength and areas for weakness that we've broken down into subcommittees. So one of them will be family and community engagement. One is social emotional learning support. One is opportunities for student voice and student engagement. We'll look at climate and culture in our schools, curriculum and instruction, and systems and processes. So within that survey that our stakeholder members received after our first session, they were able to kind of mark which topics they were most interested in. And so they can be part of some of those subgroups who will continue the work in those areas.
It was a really good meeting. It was our first time together where folks had an opportunity to talk and discuss and offer their feedback. And I think it was good feedback. I think it was open and honest conversation. And I think having a structure like that where we all just kind of had some independent think time when we looked at the definitions, which is how we did that. So for example, with the word trust, we kind of took a few minutes to just think individually, what does that mean to you? What does that look like, feel like in a school? What is that? You know, what would you want for your child if we were really all trusting each other? What does that look like? And then coming together and just throwing ideas out, we really got lots of different perspectives on what that means. And also a little insight into how people are feeling maybe that there isn't trust or, you know, because you always kind of, you might be defining it based on what you're lacking. And so we're taking all of that work and there'll be some draft definitions that can go out to our stakeholders before our next meeting. And we'll continue to work collaboratively on those things. And because really that's our vision. And that's what we're creating is a vision for what we want for our students. So it's been good work so far. We're excited about next steps and just wanted to keep you in the loop.
Any questions? Thanks for moving forward on that. It's
Absolutely.
important.
Thank you for your
Thanks.
support.
Tracy, thank you too.
Thanks, Tracy.
All right, so we're going to go on to our action items. Action item 9. Excuse me, A. I'm going to begin with our approval of the proposed resolutions for the 2021 Delegate Assembly. So at the October 12th Committee of the Whole, the board agreed to vote on the proposed resolutions for the 2021 Delegate Assembly. I just thought I'd give a little background, just if somebody's picking up on this for the first time. Every year in November, the Illinois Association of School Boards has a conference in Chicago in the end of November, where delegates from potentially every school board in the state. There's never all of them, but there's up to 800 some odd school boards in the state, and each one is supposed to send a delegate. And they have a conference and they meet to give the Illinois Association of School Boards, who is our professional organization, guidance for their advocacy work for the following year. So their school districts from around the state present resolutions to the Illinois Association of School Boards delegates. They are voted on in terms of to support or not support. And if they gain enough support, if they're voted on by majority, the Illinois Association of School Boards will dedicate time and resources to advocating for those changes and resolutions at the state, usually at the state level, sometimes at the national level as well. This year, we were presented with 23 potential resolutions. 16 were new resolutions. One was amended, 4 were reaffirming, 2 were new belief statement. 1 was a new belief statement, and 1 was an amended belief statement. And out of those 16 new resolutions, the board, we voted on all these individually where we wanted to, whether or not we wanted to support. And I will be the delegate to the assembly, and I will take the board's position overall to that assembly and vote on these resolutions according to the board's will. And so our votes on the 16 new resolutions, 5 of which actually differed from the Illinois Association of School Boards committee review. So maybe we're rebels or rogues, I don't know. Prior to opening up, asking for a motion to vote on this, is there any discussion? I would cycle it back to the opening public opinion where the League of Women Voters made a position on that resolution number 2 on the ability to carry, I don't remember the exact wording, but
Student safety and protection.
Student safety and protection, and having to do with employees permitted to carry guns in schools. But if any conversation that needs to be had, please bring it up now.
I'd like to say something, and I'm sorry, I should have mentioned this last time, and I wasn't thinking when it was up for discussion, so I apologize. But I just wanted to publicly express my opposition to resolution number 2, which calls for IASB to advocate for the new legislation allowing trained school district employees the ability to carry a concealed firearm on district property. I know the proposing district had reasons for why they thought this was necessary. I understand their concerns regarding the lack of school resource officers and their ability to hire and retain them, and the emergency response times. But at the same time, I do not feel guns have a place in our schools. So I understand this is a local control issue, but I just personally wanted to state my opposition. I understand the board as a whole feels differently, and I fully support Mark taking the guidance of the full board. I just wanted to make my opinion known on that. So
Is that a change in your position or the same as before?
it's the
So
same as
numbers
before.
don't change.
The numbers don't change. Yeah.
So overall, the board remains in support of student safety and protection plan. Okay.
We do, but I do think it's important to acknowledge, Tim, what you just said, I think is a great point. And also League of Women Voters, that's who sent us the letter. They make wonderful points too. And I think that their opinion and that their words are important. And I just want to acknowledge that we do hear them and we do acknowledge that. And it's not lightly, I think, that we made this decision. Nobody is a fan of guns in schools. But ultimately, I came down on being in favor of it and taking IASB's recommendation because
I don't know what it's like to be in a rural area where 20 minutes is response time and that type of thing. But I do just want to reiterate that, guns in schools is not a positive note or something taken lightly.
Thanks. Anybody else? All right, so may I have a motion to approve the IASB proposed resolution for the 2021 Delegate Assembly?
So moved.
Second, anybody?
Second.
I don't think I need a roll call here. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
One. So the motion is approved. Let's see, next item B, approval of the Truth and Taxation hearing December 14th for December 14th, 2021 at 6:45. The process of setting a levy is completed annually and must be approved by a school board prior to the last Tuesday in December. This is something we do every year. Anything to add, Jay?
Just that it's this hearing would be legally required if we were to levy a increase of more than 5%, but we as a board have chosen to do it every year for transparency reasons.
Good idea. Questions or comments? We have a motion to approve the Truth and Taxation hearing on December 14th at 6:45 PM as presented by the administration.
So moved.
Second.
What do you think? All in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved. Item C, approval of the Baker Tilly amended engagement letter. That's our auditor. Administration recommends that the board approve the updated engagement letter with our current auditing firm, Baker Tilly US, for the addition of a single audit of federal funds. And so just to summarize, what's going on there is because we received over a threshold amount of federal funding for our summer food service program, we are required to have this additional audit, and that's going to cost us an additional $3,000. Did I say that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Any questions, comments, concerns?
Is it $3,000 each year? Is it $6,000 total, or is it 3,000?
The engagement letter was adjusted for $3,000 each year.
Okay,
But if we do not exceed the threshold next year, I don't believe
gotcha.
it will be required. It's just, would be in the letter in case that it's needed.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So may I have a motion to approve the Baker Tilly amended engagement letter as presented to the administration, by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Can we have a roll call vote on this, please, Ann?
So, because that's
Yeah,
expenditure.
yeah.
Tim Penich,
Yes.
Amy Connell Donahue,
Yes.
Ann Hill, yes. Mark Barry.
Yes.
Lauren Hirsch.
Yes.
Carrie Steinbach.
Yes.
Did Carrie respond?
He did.
respond? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, motion's approved. Sorry, I blocked that one out. Item D is the approval of personnel changes. Last week, at our last meeting, the committee of the whole, Dr. Leali went into quite a bit of detail on 3 recommendations for some personnel changes that the details of which are all presented in the board packet, but at a very high level. The first one is to increase by one FTE, the Director of Education, Technology and Innovation position. So that's a new hire. Now FTE stands for full-time equivalent. Essentially, it's a body to bring in one Director of Education, Technology and Innovation at a total cost to the district of somewhere between $120,000 and $170,000, including benefits. But that should net out to about a $50,000 increase after we make some changes in our suppliers to various technology things. It also includes another motion would be to increase by 1 FTE a permanent substitute teacher in the district at a cost of $46,000 annually for this year. And that would help alleviate the burden on some of our administrators, our wonderful principals who have been spending time as substitute teachers, looking to get back to doing their work. Also help us with the shortage of substitute teachers, and we believe we can keep that person busy all the time. Also, item 3 is to special services assistants increase in compensation at a rate of 75 cents an hour, which totals for all those involved about $3,400 for the year. Any questions, comments, or concerns on any of that? So we have to vote on these separately. May I have a motion to approve the increase of 1.0 FTE Director of Educational Technology and Innovation as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Amy Connell Donahue,
Yes.
Anne Hill, yes. Mark Barry.
Yes.
Lauren Hirsch.
Yes.
Carrie Steinbach.
Yes.
Tim Penich.
Yes.
Motion is approved. May I have a motion to approve the increase of 1.0 FTE for the permanent substitute teacher as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second, I'll second. Roll call vote, please.
Anne Hill, yes. Mark Barry.
Yes.
Lauren Hirsch.
Yes.
Carrie Steinbach.
Yes.
Tim Penich.
Yes.
Amy Connell Donahue.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Finally, may I have a motion to approve the special services assistance increase in compensation as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second, anybody?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Anne Hill, yes. Mark Barry.
Yes.
Lauren Hirsch.
Yes.
Carrie Steinbach.
Yes.
Tim Penich.
Yes.
Amy Connell Donahue.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Item E, the personnel report. Oop, I was not on the ball. I should have had that up and running. Give me a moment, gotta pull it up. I have it. It's just gotta, takes a while to scroll down to it. I was download a PDF of the board packet. And I don't
Page
trust-
112.
112?
112 on the board packet.
Way down, okay. Oop, no, it's not. I just passed it.
What?
Page 77 on mine.
Oh.
Person.
Lauren's got a different.
I got it, Jay, thanks.
She
You
has
got
the
it.
presidential.
All right, so the personnel report for this month, includes a non-licensed new hire, Latoria Williams, a special needs aide at the elementary school effective October 25th, replacing Taylor Mitchell, and this will be at a rate of $15 an hour. It includes a resignation by Allison Fink, a health teacher at the middle school effective November 19th. She's accepted another job. It includes the following licensed new hires: Sarah Williams as a health teacher at the middle school effective November 15th, replacing Allison Fink at a salary of $51,000 a year. It includes Riley Worthen, a new music teacher at the elementary school, effective October 27th, replacing Vicki Weber at a salary of $68,540. And it includes the following FMLA requests: Jackie Tivador, a teacher at the elementary school, effective February 16th for 12 weeks. Cassie Leto, a teacher at the elementary school, effective January 18th for 12 weeks. And Kate Sapienza, a teacher at the elementary school, effective March 25th for 12 weeks. Are there any questions or comments about the personnel report? May I have a motion to approve the October 26, 2021 personnel report as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mark Barry.
Yes.
Lauren Hirsch.
Yes.
Carrie Steinbach.
Yes.
Tim Penich.
Yes.
Amy Connell Donahue.
Yes.
Anne Hill, yes.
Motion is approved. The consent agenda, item F. For this month's consent agenda includes the open session meeting minutes from the September 28th, 2021 budget hearing meeting, the September 28th, 2021 regular Board of Education meeting, the October 12th, 2021 Committee of the Whole meeting. It includes the closed session meeting minutes from the September 28th, 2021 regular Board of Education meeting, the October 12th, 2021 Committee of the Whole meeting. It includes the treasurer's report, the impress report, the bills report, and the P card report. Would anybody like, any of the board members like any of that removed for further discussion so we can vote on the rest by consent, or leave it all in? Okay, I'm gonna leave it all in. Any questions or comments on any of that? May I have a motion to approve the October 26th, 2021 consent agenda as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Carrie Steinbach.
Yes.
Tim Penich.
Yes.
Amy Connell Donahue.
Yes.
Anne Hill, yes. Mark Barry.
Yes.
Lauren Hirsch.
Yes.
Motion is approved. That's our last action item. Item number 10 is FOIA requests. We have details on 3 FOIA requests in the board packet if anybody's interested. Item 11 is public comments. Nobody's in the audience. Shelley, if you're still there, is there anybody on Zoom or any written comment we need to read?
No public comment at this time, Mark.
Thanks. Anybody on the board? Public comment. Any other issues or items that we need to discuss? Thanks again to our awesome principals. We appreciate all your work.
Yes.
Yeah.
And happy Principals Day and week. I'll be sure to celebrate that.
And we ask all of our parents to help us celebrate too. So if you see our awesome
Yeah.
principals, make sure you give them a pat on the back.
Yeah.
They're pretty great.
Air high five.
Yep. So at 8:36, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
And